The show is basically, there's so many different reasons that I'm just like, how do I even pinpoint, how do I grab just
No,
one?
what's your idea? Don't pick one, just what's the idea?
To just have real conversations.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
All
with
right.
people.
Okay, I didn't know this was starting right off the bat. Do I look all right? Am I good?
I have
Okay. You'd say that no matter
good
what.
go time. All right. Welcome to Tea Talks. I want to start off by saying most of the people that we've had on the show thus far have been people I know. But Brian, the only thing I know about you is you're the Tesla guy. So I think this is going to be a really awesome experience and exactly what we're looking for in Tea Talks. So tell us about yourself. Why Tesla? Why Teslas? Why are you the Tesla guy?
Well, it started when I needed to replace my car. It was one of those, it was about mileage and it was about done. So I was looking around thinking, you know, I don't really know what I want. I want something that's American made. I want something that's quicker than my old car because I do like speed. And then I started kind of noticing Tesla was winning tons of awards in 2013, and this was 2014 when I was looking. And I thought, well, there's no way I'm ever going to be buying a $100,000 car. But I started bugging Tesla in California, and then they referred me to the people in Minneapolis. And then 4 months later, I ordered a Tesla after test driving one in Bismarck the night before.
How did they get that Tesla there?
It was an owner in Bismarck.
Oh, okay.
I called and said, I want to see one. And they said, well, come to Minneapolis. And I said, I'm not driving 600 miles to see a car I'm not buying. And she kind of laughed. And I said, can you find me one closer? And she said, well, I'll see what I can do. And this guy calls me 2 days later, ecstatic that I want to see a Tesla.
So there are some like serious Tesla lovers out
That's
there.
how it all works. They have no salespeople. They have no advertising budget. So yeah, then I go to Bismarck with my dad, and we go up to this guy's house, and he's so excited I'm there, and we go for a drive in a car that doesn't make any noise, and it's crazy, and it was like driving a 3-year-old around because I was the first person to drive this guy's car that wasn't him.
Wow.
So yeah, and it was about 5 minutes into the test drive that I was like, well, I'm ordering one tomorrow. Like, it was a done deal.
$100,000 car. You were...
Well, I'd already done the math that it's you know, everybody looks at the upfront price, but I'm kind of a numbers guy in computers and spreadsheets, great. So I had it all penciled out that it was the same cost over 6 to 7 years as owning 2 other normal vehicles.
Normal meaning?
Gas cars.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have 2 depreciations, I wouldn't have 2 insurance. But the reason I would need 2 with my business hauling stuff, I need some space. And if I want to race and do anything fun in the summer with a car, you're not going to do that with a van or something. So hence this car could do both because it's a full-size car and it's fast.
So you race your Tesla as well?
Yep.
Here in Dickinson?
Just Bismarck, and I did one just for fun drag race thing in Minnesota.
Nice. And your winnings?
It's not technically competitive. The drag racing was just open time trials for fun. And the other one is autocross in Bismarck, which is essentially skill driving. The idea is if you drove every car there, they adjust your times based on the vehicle, not you. So if you got through the course in every vehicle, after adjustments, your times would be identical in every car. So it's supposed to be the driver, not the car. So at the end of the day, you're supposed to see where you rank against all the drivers.
Oh, I see.
No matter what car you drive. So it's just a ton of fun to go through this course that's all these cones, and as fast as you can get through the course without hitting them.
Was that a reason why you also wanted the Tesla?
Correct. It did everything I wanted, which was the only car that did. One of the other aspects being, it was kind of crazy when I got my second Model S. It's the world's quickest accelerating production car you can buy. So the world's quickest 0 to 60 car you can buy is in Dickinson, North Dakota. Like, that's just strange to even think about. Like, growing up in all these supercars from Italy and all over the world and Japanese supercars and all this stuff, and you're reading about, and now 15, 20 years later, I own a car that would make those look slow. Like, it's mind-blowing. Like, it doesn't, and that's what I drive every day. It's not a gas guzzler. It's functional. It does exactly what I want. It gets better. So it's just very strange that now an American car that's electric is considered the benchmark in that area.
Did you race before the Tesla?
I had done some drag racing, but I had never been able to do autocross because any vehicle I had would be not good for that. Because they were front-wheel drive, and that's just not something set up for that kind of driving.
Can you tell me a little bit about the Tesla vehicle? Because I actually don't know much. And I feel embarrassed, but I tried to do some research, didn't get far.
The big picture, Elon Musk, one of the original starters of the company, wanted to do all electric cars because no one was doing it. Went to a guy's garage, saw a prototype electric car they had built in their garage kind of for fun. They take it out, it's quick, it's awesome. He's so excited that this technology exists because he didn't think the batteries were there yet. And at that point was like, guys, we're starting an electric car company. And now we have Tesla, the largest electric car company after probably one in China, BYD, but they're not in America, so we really don't hear about them. But yeah, in America, it's the only electric car company right now that's producing cars in mass.
So is it easy to finance a Tesla?
It's weird with Tesla because they don't finance like other car companies. Like they don't have internal financing, but they assign you a financing rep. So they have people who don't make them any money other than, well, helping you buy the car to a degree, but you've already committed by the time they assign you a financing rep. So I actually checked with all the banks locally. I had gone around, what are your rates? Here's what I'm doing. Same thing with insurance. And then this rep from Tesla calls me and I'm like, well, I'm just gonna, call all my local banks. I'm fine. I'm not worried about the financing for it. And he goes, okay, well, I'm gonna send you an email with these two companies, US companies that do a lot of Tesla loans. Okay, doesn't hurt to submit 2 more forms when I've submitted 10 already. And yeah, 2 days later, I got a call from a bank in Illinois that offered a rate substantially under what anyone else would do. And it was Tesla only. You had to be buying a Tesla. They wouldn't do it for any other car. So I guess they really thought those were a safe bet if people were willing to do a Tesla at this point in time, and they still do it to this day, have a special rate for Tesla owners.
So yet again, another way to save money.
Yeah, I had 1.74% on the loan. So when buying a $100,000 car like this Tesla was, what you don't pay in fuel and maintenance is where you get your cost back. And with my second one that I have now, it's also lower insurance because it's the safest car. And they're not all 100,000. The Model 3 has been out for over a year. That car starts at $37,000. So that's normal car price at that point. So there's actually 6 other Teslas in Dickinson already.
Not all of them are yours.
No.
You have 3.
No, I have 2 because one hasn't sold yet.
Oh, okay.
So on the $100,000 car, how it would break down with the pricing. So I saved $15,000 in fuel over 5 years. Maintenance was minimal, pretty much tires, which is normal. Brakes are like new because you never use them because an electric car has regenerative braking. So when you lift off the throttle, the motor turns into an alternator, which then slows you down and puts the energy back in the battery so you don't waste it on brakes like you do in a typical car. And so then resale value stays high, so when you do sell the car, you're not out as much as you would think you would be from such an expensive car.
How much in gas do you spend each month?
It completely depends on how much you drive, just like in a gas car. But if you want a simple breakdown, I might spend between $30 and $40 a month to go 1,000 miles. So it's just a lot cheaper. So one fill up that might get a gas car somewhere between 250 and 350 miles, I'm gonna go about 1,000 on that.
Now, why is it that not everybody has a Tesla? Because I did a little bit of research and found out that it's great, it's better in snow and...
It's the travel right now. We don't have superchargers. We're the last state left. We're the only state that doesn't have superchargers outside of Alaska. So if I want to take a road trip right now, I still stop at other owners' homes around the state and I charge at their house. Like multiple owners have each other's garage codes. So you just kind of schedule with them to show up and charge at their house. So my car's had overnights in Minot and Fargo and all over, and I've gotten up in the morning and there's been a Model S in my driveway charging. So just kind of, it's right now it's like a little mini extended family.
Yeah, like just a little community. You get to make friends. And does a charging station cost money as well to install into your home? Or
in your home, there is a $500 one that mounts to your wall. And that one can be hooked up by an electrician. It uses essentially the same wiring as a camper would. So a lot of people that have if they already have a camper plug, they'll adapt it for the Tesla. The car comes with its own plug-in. Think like a laptop. You plug into the wall and then into the car. Same as your laptop, except the end that's changeable, instead of the end that goes into the laptop to modify what kind of laptop it'll work for, you modify for what plug goes into your wall. So if you don't have a 240 camper plug and you just have a good old 110 wall plug, you can use that. It's just really slow to charge. You might only get 3 miles per hour. So, overnight you might only gain 40 miles back into the car. So it's slower, but it's functional. But then on trips, you need these high speed, they're called level 3 chargers, that'll charge the car to 80% in as little as 20 minutes right now.
Have you ever just died, I guess, while driving?
Nope.
Or you are pretty good at mapping out your routes?
I only had to apologize to the car once for swearing at it when I thought I wasn't going to make it. I was in South Dakota on the way back home from out east, and I came to Murdo, South Dakota, where one of the chargers is, and I hit 0 miles of range a mile before the exit. So I had to go 2 more miles with the car telling me 0. But made it. The car made it. Right. So once I made it there, it was all good. But and other than that, I don't have, they call it range anxiety, like you think you're not going to make it, because I know exactly how the car operates now that I'm not worried. So the running joke is now with other owners that know me, like if they take a picture and say, "Ooh, barely made it," and they have 10 miles left of range, I'll be like, "So what were you planning to do with the other 9?" So I'll comment, "You weren't going fast enough," if they have more than 1 mile left. So it's the running joke that I don't have range anxiety because I know what I'm going to get there with, and the car tells you all the time how it's doing. So you can tell it where you're going, and it will tell you what you're going to get there with left. And every mile you go, it's updating, saying, "Well, you're going to have 5 miles left when you get there. You're going to have 4.
Like a Siri-type voice is in the car?
Nope, it's just a graph.
Oh, okay.
So you just see, when you arrive at destination, you're going to have this much left. And so all of a sudden, if that number hits 0, probably should slow down.
What other amazing technologies are inside of the vehicle?
Autopilot's the big one. So the car does not fully drive itself yet, but mine is configured to be capable of it when they release it. So like if I go to Fargo or Bismarck, I essentially don't do anything. Once I'm on the interstate, the car takes care of, it can switch lanes on its own. So it decides when to pass people, when to pull back into the lane. If somebody's coming down an on-ramp, it moves over. So it's already a better driver than a lot of people. So yeah, it slows down. It has radar and cameras. So it sees like we do with 7 cameras, and then has radar to verify an object in front of you that what the cameras see is there.
This is probably a silly question. I don't know why I'm asking it, but what do you do? Are you just like kicking it back?
You keep a hand on the wheel at this point, so it knows you're there, or it yells at you. And if you don't respond within 30 seconds, it turns off and will pull over and then puts you in autopilot jail, where it won't let autopilot turn back on unless you stop and put it in park and then go again until it'll turn back on. So you do have to stay paying attention, but it's far less stressful. Because what do you do when you're on the interstate if there's much traffic? You're just staring at the guy in front of you. Really is all you're doing. Because if he slows down, you need to slow down immediately. When you're on autopilot, you're looking around. So I see way more wildlife where it's heading. Like I'll see deer that before I would have never even considered knowing where they were, because you wouldn't look out to the sides. You just look straight ahead.
Right.
So much more aware of what's around. You have more time, you check mirrors, you just look what's going on. So it's actually a calmer experience of, I'm not just staring at the guy in front of me, it's not stressful. Like when I took this car to Fargo, when the car took the off-ramp into Fargo and I had to take over to drive in Fargo, it was the weirdest 3 blocks. I hadn't really driven in 2 hours sitting in the car. So to all of a sudden have to drive.
No braking or anything.
No.
If there's a car close, it slows down.
Or passes them.
Or passes them?
Right, on the interstate, it switches lanes and goes around them. And you set how aggressive the car is and everything.
What do people say to you? Or how does every person you know not have a Tesla at this point? What do they say to you? What do people say to you?
It's the range. It's the range. I know multiple people who, as soon as the superchargers go in, will be considering getting a Tesla, like immediately. They're just looking at my struggles right now, going, with kids, I'm just not going to risk it. I'm not going to go sit in Bismarck for 2 hours charging like you do, because I'm planning it and I've chosen to do this at this point. But yeah, once the superchargers go in and most locations are accessible like any car, it's going to just explode up here.
So aside from here, what about the whole world? How come everybody else hasn't switched over?
Tesla can't make enough. Every car they make is sold.
Wow.
What other car company? They don't have car lots. They don't have salespeople.
They don't have debt.
Well, Tesla's got a lot of debt, And they've only turned a profit a few quarters, but it's from rapid growth. They're reinvesting everything every other company would be making, but theirs is going into building out these superchargers, building out the infrastructure for the upcoming Model Y, which is the hatchback version of their Model 3. So that's going to be their number one selling car when it comes out, because a hatchback is just so functional.
Yeah.
It'll have a third row of seating. It actually is going to be like the new station wagon if you think about it. It's not as tall as an SUV, so it's going to have that same sizing, but of course won't look like that because that's just not cool. But it's going to have that same sportiness, same ballpark pricing as the Model 3. So that's going to be the vehicle that's going to define them shortly. I believe they'll be starting production second quarter of next year.
So aside from finances, it makes sense to have a Tesla. You still have the obstacles that you have to go through. Are there any other reasons aside from also that you get to race in it? What else drives you to have passion towards a Tesla?
It's fun all the time because of what it is, the autopilot and the power and the handling, like you said, and the snow, so it's safer. You have all these features that way. But then it's environmentally positive. It's much cleaner regardless of what the source of your electricity is. So it's one of those ways that I feel like this is something I can do. I enjoy it. So the caveats are worth it right now. Plus I know it gets better. The car updates all the time. I actually just got an update yesterday that added power to the car. The car is faster today than it was last
So
week.
it has updates similar to a phone or an app or something like that?
Constantly. Yep.
Through Tesla?
Yeah, the car is always connected to Tesla. So as soon as yesterday, I actually left my parents' house and the car showed that there was an update available. So as soon as I connected to Wi-Fi, it would go get it. So I got home, it automatically connects to my Wi-Fi, and 10 minutes later it was downloaded and said, "Are you ready to update?" And then it asked, "Well, do you want to do it now or like 2 in the morning?" Because usually I say, "No, I need the car, blah, blah." So it says, "How's 2 in the morning?" And I say, "Great." And I get in the next morning and it'll have release notes. Here's what we did to your car last night. Like, here's new buttons you have. Here's new features. Your car does this now. Your car doesn't do this. So it's the only car that gets better as it gets older instead of the other way around. So my car is faster and smarter today than it was 3 days ago, for example. So like when I first got the car, just 4 months ago, it wouldn't switch lanes on its own. Now it does. So that kind of a feature. It sees road construction, traffic cones as of yesterday. Before that, it didn't see them. It wasn't built into its programming yet. So having this American company that's doing all these great things and building in America, I think is also important.
I kind of wanted to dig into, because you talked about how it's better for the environment. Do you have like a strong passion for being able to help the environment, or was that a motivation to be environmentally friendly?
It was part of it. It by no means was, some people say, it's number one, that's why I'm buying an electric car in the environment. Mine wasn't. Mine was definitely more selfish reasons, like it's fast, it's what I want.
Right.
But then secondary was, okay, it is cleaner, it is better, and it lasts longer. So I'm, again, looking at the long term, an electric car will last, they believe, typically 2 to 3 times what a typical gas car does for longevity. So it has that going for it on the environmental side too. You don't have to build 3 cars, you build 1.
That's just crazy.
And you fill it at home. That's also what people don't think about. They just look at the negatives in travel. So I don't fill a car ever. I go home, I plug it in, I walk in the house, I get up the next day, and it's full, or whatever I set it to charge to. So I don't even ever spend the 15 minutes to drive over and fill gas and then back to whatever I was doing. I don't even do that. So it actually has time savings when you're driving less than 200 miles in a day. So another perk of it's just ready to go when I am.
You say that you have to charge in Bismarck for a couple hours sometimes.
Yep, if I would do a lot of traveling, sure.
And then what are you doing for those 2 hours?
Typically I'll plan it, whatever, for something like right now if I would be going to Minneapolis. This car can make it straight to Fargo, typically on a full charge. So let's say it was bad weather and I wasn't going to make it, knowing that it was going to be really cold, I would probably plan to have lunch with friends in Bismarck for an hour or something. Or visit friends in Bismarck. There's always something to do in Bismarck when you're from Dickinson, so that's not hard. So yeah, I would couple the owners I would contact and say, is available, and I would charge at their house. One's only a few blocks from downtown, so I've just parked my car at his house to charge and walked 3 blocks to downtown and had dinner and then walked back to the car and drove home. So got 5 minutes of exercise in.
No negatives.
Yeah, if you plan it, it's planning. If you're not a planner right now, it's not the car for you.
Yeah.
If you're a planner, you can probably
But
be
that's
okay
an
with
easy
it.
adjustment, right? Too.
Not for everybody.
Oh, really?
I have some
Okay.
friends who, like, I think they have mini panic attacks thinking about what I do because they don't want it. They want to get in a car, go. There's nothing to think about. It's what they've always done. It can fill with gas in any small town, you know, that kind of thing. So there are still a major caveat of the charging up here, which, like I said, doesn't exist in other places. Like when I drove it to Indiana, I never once touched my plug. I only used superchargers to Indiana and back. Never once did I plug into anything but Tesla infrastructure.
Wow. Is that what they're building over by Cashwise right now?
Correct, the mall here. Yeah, they've been really great to work with.
You're working with them on that.
Well, depends on how you look at it, yes. I contacted them and said, you're the perfect location. Based on what Tesla looks for, you are the location in Dickinson to have this. Can I sort of help and will you do this? And they were like, when I explained, they were like, yeah, this sounds like a good thing for us and for Tesla, so why not do it? And yeah, they've been in negotiations for a very long time.
So they kind of deal with the whole finances and everything on putting that between Tesla and the mall.
Yep. Essentially what happens, what I've read about for other locations, is it's like a $0 lease. Tesla says, we'll come in, but we need 8-10 parking spots worth of space, and then we'll essentially bring you traffic. Cars will come here because this is where they're going to charge. Like, especially the early models, like my first car, it's free to travel for life. So my other car, you could drive it to Miami and back. It won't cost you anything. So
Also, other charging stations, they charge you for.
correct, because they're for profit. Where Teslas, that was part of you buying the car. Where my new one, I have 6,000 free supercharging miles and then I pay. So the car is linked to your credit card. You drive up, you plug in, the car shows you right on the screen what's billing you. And every location actually tells you up front how much it's going to cost per minute to be there. So you just know the states that have cheaper electricity, like South Dakota, for example, is very, very cost effective on electricity. Theirs is much less than if you're filling in California for the same amount. But then gas is cheaper in South Dakota than it is in California too. So
if they sell every car that they make, do you have to get on some sort of a list in order?
there have been waiting lists. I reserved day one when they released the Model 3.
Planning my purchase here.
Right. The good news is you don't have to wait anymore. The Model 3s, when they announced it, it was a year and a half until production. There were over 400,000 people who reserved a car. There were 115,000 of us who reserved without seeing it. We knew 4 specifications of the car. Like it was like 4-door, 0 to 60 in 5.3 or less, at least 220 miles of range and one other thing. And 115,000 of us said, yeah, sounds good, we'll put $1,000 down right now. You had to put $1,000 down. It was refundable, but you had to put down $1,000 saying, hey, yeah, here you go, I'm in line. So I did that for it to be my parents' car because I also knew they were planning on current owners would be at the front of the line. So even though I might not have been the first person, I would be right behind the owners who reserved before me. Because you had to go to a Tesla facility to reserve for the first 24 hours. When they had people standing in line for 48 hours to reserve a car they'd never seen, they opened up pre-orders online before the announcement instead of after like they planned because they were worried of how much rush there would be, and they were right. They had tens of thousands of orders in a couple minutes online.
Wow.
For a car we hadn't seen yet. We're all logged in waiting for the announcement. And then it came out and was announced and they had hundreds of thousands of orders in a couple weeks.
If everybody's going to transition, because I just don't know why you wouldn't, what do you have any predictions of what's going to happen to all of the other vehicles? Or, yeah, I don't.
They're going to lose value very quickly. Right now, pickups will maintain because that's still tougher to do on electric because of range. It's not a power issue because electric vehicles are much more powerful to their gas and diesel counterparts. A good example, my car
Why is that?
was just electric motors are highly efficient and they are more reliable. If you think about everything you use, everything you touch on a daily basis is using an electric motor in many ways. Every household appliance that has a moving part is using an electric motor, not a gas motor. Why? It's clean, it's highly efficient, and they last. you don't replace electric motors very often. And in Tesla vehicles, they're brushless. So there's no part touching that actually creates the power. So there's just a gear to another gear that goes directly out to the wheels. So there's only a couple dozen moving parts in the whole car instead of hundreds to thousands in a typical car. So they're simpler to build, they're more powerful per space they take up, and they're clean. You can drive them indoors.
I don't want to steer you away from you finishing what you were about to say, but what about maintenance? Is there
What maintenance?
You don't ever have to like fix this vehicle?
Okay, but like when you say maintenance, what are you thinking about? Like oil changes?
Not oil changes. I guess what if something, you know how there's so many
Something
things,
goes wrong. I had a door handle fail.
Brakes.
Sure.
Well, you know,
Yep.
yeah.
I call up Parker and he shows up at my house and fixes it.
Is Parker a friend?
No, Parker is our Tesla tech for the region.
Oh.
And most owners in the Midwest have his number. And we're supposed to call in and get a normal like on the schedule, and then Parker just calls you and says, hey, when are we going to do this? I'll be around.
Does Parker work for, I know this is probably just a random question too, but does Parker work for Tesla?
Yeah, he's Tesla employee.
And they just have random people in regions?
He's like all of our friend. It's weird. Like, it's a good comment here. It's kind of funny with how small and tight the group is. I posted online that his girlfriend likes sweet red wine. Because that was like my tip for him, like, hey, come grab a bottle of wine. He's like, oh, I don't really. And I was like, oh. And he's like, yeah, but my girlfriend does. And I said, oh, does she drink sweet red wine? So, oh, well, here's a bottle for you. Mm-hmm. Well, he told me that he's been given now cases of wine over the past year.
She's going to have a lot of ladies' nights.
Right, because that's just how the group is. So we're all appreciative he shows up. And you're thinking, well, how do they get to you? Is it quick? Is it cost effective? A good example was I needed a part replaced under warranty. The car was functional. It was a door handle issue. And my dad's, we'll just say traditional vehicle, had a failure under warranty at the same time. His also drivable, but a little more of a concern than mine was at the time. It took him 2 weeks to get it fixed. Mm-hmm. Back then it wasn't Parker, it was a different Tesla tech from Minneapolis. But he was out here in, I believe, 4 days. So it was easier to get a car fixed that had a tech 600 miles away and quicker and cheaper than for my dad to get his into a typical automotive place to get fixed. So it's pretty hard to argue with that service.
Does it ever make you nervous that once more people start to purchase Teslas in the area and we just have Parker, he's the one guy, he's going to be very busy? Well, hopefully not, because it sounds like they don't break down very often. There's not really much maintenance.
There's the typical known issues of things they've worked on and fixed, like the door handle issue. All 4 of my door handles were replaced in my first car. But they figured out what they did wrong, so all my replacements don't have that problem. And it was a cold weather issue. A wire was breaking because it was getting moved around, and in cold weather it was slowly wearing the wire down, and then it would just snap. The new one the wire doesn't get moved. So they figure it out and they fix it. They don't do model years. Like, you know how a car will be the same for about 3 years, and then they make major changes? Tesla changes the car every week. So you could order a car, somebody else could order one a week later. They may have a feature you don't have that neither of you knows about until your friend gets the car, and you're like, mine doesn't do that. It's that quick. So they're constantly innovating. They move so much quicker than everybody else.
You mentioned weather. Was that something that Tesla even needs to worry about? Because we get such harsh temperatures here. Is there any effect on the vehicle?
Yep, batteries are very sensitive to temperature. That's a big issue. Get a lot of questions on that when I'm at car shows and stuff, and that's a really good technical question. The batteries really shouldn't freeze. What Tesla does, their battery management system, the BMS, is the reason their cars are lasting essentially forever compared to other ones. It keeps the battery warm or cool depending on what it needs internally. So it will waste some electricity to keep itself warm. When you start driving, there is some lack of efficiency that creates heat from batteries, so that heat is maintained inside the battery pack for its own use. So it's a very well-designed car in that respect. Now, I have had it out in the middle of nowhere, which we'll call north of Belfield, and I was out there at 33 below, and I did plug into 110 at my friend's house out there.
Outside, inside?
Outside.
Okay.
For a couple hours. Now, I did plug it into 110 like you would a regular car for a block heater, and that maintained the car's temperature for the batteries over that hours I was outside like that. But it didn't charge. So actually that energy was being used just like it would in a gas car with a block heater. It wasn't for moving the car, it was for keeping the car ready to move. So that is a caveat of North Dakota. If you only park it outside, you do need 240 electricity. A 110 regular wall plug won't be enough. So that is a caveat for very cold. If you don't have a semi-warm garage, like my garage isn't heated, but it'll only get down to like 30 degrees even if it's 15 below out, which at that point, plugging it in, it just uses a little bit of energy.
And do you need to warm it up like all the other
Nope.
vehicles?
There's no warm-up period. There's no break-in on electric motors. You go to your app and you tell it, warm up the car, and 2 minutes later you have a warm car. So it warms up much quicker because it's instant electric heat. There's no engine warm-up. You just say, make heat, and it makes heat.
This is crazy. Okay, so going back to the question that we've veered so far away from, the future, what does it look like?
Electric, first off. and why I say that, from being an owner, first off. Second, look at some of the European countries. There are a couple right now, 50% of their cars sold every month are electric. So they're already there. So we're essentially playing catch up on that. Now they are incentivized to go electric more than we are, but that's the way they're moving. They want the cleaner economy. They want to move to electric. So that's why they're doing it quicker.
I feel like I'm going to veer away from the question again, but who was the U.S.? Did they come up with the first electric vehicle, or was it European? And we can edit this out too, but I'm just curious because why is the European community or culture, I don't know what I'm trying to say, how come they're all transitioning and why are we so far behind?
Why are they buying so many more?
Weren't we the ones who
pioneered it?
Yes.
So Tesla is leading in being the pioneer of electric vehicles, but the big catch is it's incentivized in European countries to go electric because they understand the long-term effects and they push those more than we do. Americans tend to be a little more about the upfront and short-term, like goals and what we're doing. They're looking long-term. Some of them are big oil exporters, but they want nothing to do with oil. They're happy with selling it, bringing money into their country, but they want to maintain it inside. So one of their justifications, and a good reason for it, and the US needs to look at this too down the road, and it's starting to come up in political discussions very slowly, but we don't charge for healthcare costs of pollution in the US. So if your vehicle, all of our vehicles that are gas, diesel, whatever that we drive, if you're in a bigger city and you live downtown where there's lots of traffic all the time, it's actually not healthy to live at street level. You walk around in a much higher level of pollution. In cities like Denver, they advise you don't walk or run within half a mile of interstates because the air quality is so poor. But that's not built into any of our pricing. The oil company doesn't pay for it. The gasoline, it isn't paid for there. You and I don't pay for it at the pump, but we pay for it in our healthcare. The Nordic countries, especially in Europe, have said, yeah, we know that's not a good thing. So instead of subsidizing, and they have universal health care, so they see it. They have more reason to do it on a governmental level because they go, well, this is costing us money. The pollution's costing us money. We're doing all this green energy. We're lowering our pollution. How do we take the next step? Well, now the next step is electric cars. Except for them they were already 5 years ago going, that is our step. So they've incentivized it. So if you want a gas guzzling vehicle that gets poor mileage, they charge a humongous tax for you to buy that vehicle. BMW doesn't even ship their most high-powered, lowest fuel economy vehicles to those countries anymore because no one will buy them. Because if you can buy a Tesla, the world's quickest accelerating car, 0 to 60, for less than the BMW that does less and costs more, why would you? So they don't even ship them to those countries anymore because they've incentivized the Tesla to even be cheaper, even though right now those are actually competing vehicles. They're similarly priced. Over there, though, you might pay 50% more if you wanted that BMW because of the pollution. That's it, just because of the pollution, not any other reason. They just tax cars that pollute more. So the people go, well, yeah, I'm going to get the electric car because it's cheaper. And then that helps that country lower their other costs. They don't have as high of healthcare costs because they're not getting people sick with respiratory diseases because of pollution. So they're looking very big picture and long term.
Wow. Do you know if if we're getting there, if we're even thinking about that?
Very limited talks. You get places like California that look more into the environmental issues a little sooner, but no, you really don't. You don't see any of it. We saw it at the legislature this past year when I was there speaking on the road tax for electric vehicles, because we don't pay road tax as electric vehicles because it's built into the gasoline price. It's a tax on gasoline that pays for part of our roads. Most of it's federally funded for the interstates, but the states do have some of that. And with what the states collect in there, we weren't paying because we don't use gas. Well, most states just considered that your perk. Like, they don't pay road tax, but they're cleaner. So we'll just kind of ignore that part, but then not talk about the health part. So that was kind of like our little mini not talked about perk. Well, now I pay $120 a year on both cars right now because I own two. So they bill me, they tax me like I drive both cars at the same time right now. I can't drive two cars at one time. And I explained that to the legislature, but they didn't quite get that right. However, I'm an exception because there's probably single-digit number of people who own two electric vehicles in North Dakota right now. But it's a good example how government thinking a good idea doesn't think through the whole thing can really mess up something where I'm being double taxed on something, which $120 a year, it's not going to bankrupt me. But if somebody else is considering, the same concept, it's a concern now of, oh, well, what if they're getting a used one that's a $15,000 car? All of a sudden it's like, well, I got to pay that, and are they going to change that? Now it's in their mind.
Yeah.
One of the professors from one of the colleges in North Dakota came down and spoke on this tax and said, essentially, in short, you guys are nuts. You're taxing them when they're saving you money.
Yeah.
They're helping you. They're using North Dakota produced electricity. So why would you bill them more? And then they let him go for a little bit and said, that's really not the discussion here. And I agreed with the legislators. It really wasn't. It was about road tax. That's a separate discussion, but he brought it up. It's on record. It's on the video. They know about it now. So, they can't say they didn't hear about it. They had a professor come up and explain, these guys are technically doing the state a favor, but you're not looking at the big picture yet. And so I was like, great, somebody's really advocating for what I've been, reading about until I understood that part too. Mm-hmm. The interesting and one of the negatives that we hear about people who are, we get the fake news and all those kinds of things. One of the legislators came up to the professor and I, because I went over to talk to him after we were done with that session, as I had not met him. This was the second time I was speaking at the legislature. All the other people who spoke that day I had met. So I went over to say hi and thanks for coming and cool for speaking here. And we're chatting. And one of the legislators for this session comes over and goes to the professor in front of me, goes, you said 1 gallon of gas being burned produces 21 pounds of CO2. That's impossible. A gallon of gas only weighs 7 pounds. And the professor kind of glanced over at me and I was just kind of giving him a look like, oh, here we go. This is science denial right in front of us. So he explained, well, when you burn, the carbons in it combine CO2, 1 carbon, 2 parts oxygen is what's coming out the tailpipe. So when it's combined, that about 7 pounds equates to 21 pounds when it's done coming out your tailpipe. Because it's not just gas going in, the air is going in with it and combining. It's a combustion cycle. So he explains it like textbook, right on the point. I mean, he's a doctor in this area. He should be able to explain it and just nails it. And this legislature is just like, no, we can't. That's not possible. Like science denial right in front of me. Like,
how did you respond to that?
We just kind of both looked at each other and eventually I said, just go Google it. Like hoping
you said that too.
The legislator, like hoping there was a really good explanation if you Google it, because I had never thought of that. Like, it's high school chemistry. So I went home and Googled it, and perfect breakdown. Exactly what he said, showed how the cycle works on combustion and what comes out the tailpipe and what you have, and it was spot on.
Wow.
But it was one of those things where you all of a sudden have this moment of, this is what I'm dealing with. Like, how can I get the facts straight and have a good discussion and help the state move forward positively for everyone? Because I wasn't against the road tax. I was against the road tax being done incorrectly. I wanted it per mile. I would actually pay more than $120 a year because I drive more. My parents don't drive enough to get to $120 in road tax a year on an electric vehicle, so they should pay less.
Your parents have?
They have a Model 3. So I wanted it to be equitable. I pay more because I drive more, just like if you drive your gas car more than someone else, you pay more in road tax because you drive more. So I wanted it to be equitable, but we didn't quite get there this year, so I'm sure in a year and a half I'll be back with a couple people. We'll be testifying again to try and get it better. And again, it's not for me because I'm going to pay more, but I want to pay my share was my whole point the whole time.
Was there anything else that you guys talked about, or was it just about the road tax?
There was actually one other bill that was directly related to electric vehicles, EVs. It was actually championed by Destiny Wolf here in Dickinson, and then I helped on the sides a little bit and testified with it, but she really championed it here with Mike LaFour, our local rep. So she actually worked with him on writing a bill to make it illegal to block electric car charging in North Dakota, so that vehicles, and this includes an electric car, if I go park in front of an electric car charger and I'm not charging, I can be towed now. So the point is, they're limited, so you kind of protect it, just kind of same idea as a handicap spot at this point. It's there for a specific reason. It needs to be for that reason. So some people saying, well, why is this a big deal? We don't even have any charging yet. And what the good explanation is, North Carolina had a situation where a Tesla owner arrived at a supercharger to charge, and there were pickups intentionally parked around the supercharger location to block it so that that person could not charge. So what can they do? Well, at that point, you should call the lot owner. It was at like a mall. Well, at midnight, what do you do? How do you get a hold of somebody to say, hey, these guys are blocking your charging location? What do I do? So you can't really call the police. You can, because these people were actually harassing anyone who came by. So at that point, it did become legal. But if they're just parked there, what law are they violating? So they actually created a law here to make that illegal. So we actually have a law to blocking electric car charging. You can call the police and say, hey, they're blocking it, and they are to get them towed. And there's a fee, a fine.
Why even block them anyways? What are they doing what are they doing?
All we can believe is that they feel threatened by it somehow. It really doesn't make any sense. I mean, blocking isn't going to stop them in any way. It just gets bad press that people did this. So it's just one of those illogical things that you have a small group of people who this is something they don't like, and so this is their way of protesting it, which not a great way to protest it, in my opinion, but...
Because it's just silly.
But that's why we have a lot of the laws we do. If everybody was just honest and good about everything, we wouldn't need half of our laws. Because nobody would do those things.
So you said you were the third person to have a Tesla in North Dakota. Did you have interviews everywhere? Or did they interview you here locally?
Not much locally right away. Bismarck and Fargo ended up on the news every time I showed up at an event, but Dickinson, not a lot. The local rural electric cooperative, because I'm actually on the rural power because I'm north of 21st Street in Dickinson, they did a local article in their monthly little magazine that goes out. So that was super fun. Locally, I was interviewed once by one of the local media people, and I never saw the story run. So I had messaged the person. I said, hey, did I miss it? What's going on? And he said, well, I'm not going to run the story because I wanted to talk to like the car dealerships in town and other entities that would be involved with electric vehicles, and no one wanted to talk about it. Like they didn't want to do an interview on that. So they actually didn't run that story after a 2-hour interview and in car and driving by and doing the whole bit, and then ended up with no story. So that was strange.
Do any of our dealerships have electric vehicles?
I'm not sure if Porter's does. They could possibly have Nissan Leafs, as that would be in their lineup. I'm not aware that they have any on the lot. The other ones, they don't stock the electric cars that their companies make. I guess they just don't believe they're popular up here. What does an electric car have that your car doesn't have? Think about this. What's in it?
Battery?
Correct. My car has 8,000 batteries in it. Where are you going to get batteries if your company needs batteries? If every lithium-ion battery made in the world is already sold? you got to make batteries. Batteries are a big concern. Tesla has a master plan, a super secret master plan every 10 years that Elon releases. And it's super secret. He posts it. And one of the big ones was, it tells essentially he was telling other companies, here's what you need to do. Like, here's the 10-year plan for us, because these are going to be all of our hurdles. So they're going to be your hurdles too. So here you go. Here's the master plan. Super secret. And one of them was, you need to get batteries built. Because where are you going to get lithium-ion batteries, or whatever battery tech you go with? How are you going to build an electric car without batteries? So Tesla built the world's largest lithium-ion battery factory near Sparks, Nevada. It's still in progress. It's, I believe, a third completed, and it's already the world's biggest battery factory.
Wow. So
it just shows how innovation and long-term planning is why this company is successful.
Yes. Wow. And you think, and that's mostly why other dealerships or other car manufacturers haven't really pushed and progressed as quickly?
It's part of it. They haven't invested, and that's just one of the lacks of investment. They haven't invested in building them. An example, GM's looks like they're starting to get on board. They built the Chevy Bolt, not the Volt. The Volt's a hybrid. The Bolt is fully electric. It's actually a competitor to the Model 3. But the big catch is LG makes the batteries and the electric motor and the inverters in the vehicle. GM just assembles them. So they're partially designing, but they're buying most of the parts from somewhere else and assembling the car. Tesla's making most of those parts themselves. Or in the case of the batteries, Panasonic makes those batteries in Sparks, Nevada, inside a Tesla factory with Panasonic's machinery. So they're inside a Tesla building making Tesla's batteries on their lines.
So why aren't car manufacturers just investing all of their money into this idea and making it as good as Tesla?
I would say investors. If you see they're going to turn all these losses all of a sudden, investors are going to get scared. They're going to be, well, you guys aren't doing it right. You're not selling as many cars. You're not showing the profits. But that's what holds big, older companies back is innovation. They're slower to move because they're so set. Where Tesla, the investment is in the future. Their market cap is as big as GM's, yet they sell hardly any cars compared to GM. But the reason investors value them at the same size as a company, as this giant company like GM, is they see them as a future. The market is pricing them as, you guys are going to be big, so we got to, the stock's worth more. Where GM stock is built on, they show a profit, so there's money to be made here. But as these other companies and startups start eating into that, they may not show a profit. Well, then, if they haven't innovated quick enough and are ready to show up at the EV party, some of those companies may go under. And there's actually a lot of discussion about that some of the big autos will not exist in 10 years that we know of right now as major car companies are likely not to exist because there won't be room for all of them, and whoever's last to join the innovation won't make it.
Wow.
Teslas are built in a former GM Toyota factory in California. When there was the recession and they didn't need that factory anymore because they didn't need those vehicles to be built, Tesla got to buy the factory really cheap because who wants this old car factory? It's not, super useful for a lot of things unless that's what you're going to do. So Tesla got a heck of a deal on this factory, and then the positive is now those jobs are back in that same location.
What about trucks? I know this isn't, but can we replace trucks?
Absolutely. Tesla's already running test semis. So I think if you can run a semi, you can run a pickup. So they're running full Class 8 semis. That's the big semis you see on the road. They have a max total weight vehicle of 80,000 pounds. And the Tesla Semi in testing is showing just over 500 miles of range, fully loaded at 65 miles an hour.
My heart is like racing right now. I mean, that's changing. It's going to change the world.
Yeah, it's the only semi I've ever wanted to ride in.
You mentioned, right, that your car gets better as it gets older. if they're making a semi.
Mm-hmm. And actually, the other part about the semi that is an industry disruption, the semi will be autonomous someday. It won't need a driver. At the beginning, they're planning on caravanning them. So let's say there's 4 Tesla semis hauling stuff together. Only the lead vehicle will have a driver. The other 3 will just be following him.
Oh, wow. Okay, because I was going to bring up, didn't they try to do that with Lyft or something like that?
Yep.
There was some sort
Well, actually, there's a couple companies in the world running right now. You don't know it. They're running freight on interstates, driverless, right now. People aren't aware of that. It's happening right now. So this isn't, when people say, is this the future? And I'm like, well, more, but it's actually happening. So when I watch stories on, self-driving cars, yes, mine's not fully self-driving, but it sure does a lot of things that other cars don't. So it sure feels like it's self-driving compared to a regular car. But yeah, the semis they've already shown, they've demoed it. Lots of companies have said they've committed to dozens of the semis.
Okay, but then what does that do to the people? If you don't have drivers anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's a massive job switch. It's a job change. It's another one of those machine takes over a job that humans can do something else. It's a job a machine can do, so it's a transition.
But if we're moving so progressively with technology, what jobs will we have?
We don't know. There's been that revolution, in a lot of documentaries and shows. They'll target 3 major revolutions. The Industrial Revolution, when all of a sudden machines did tons of things, but we added jobs because we had to supplement what the machines were doing, because we did more. We just did a lot more. So it was production, and every one of these changes was an increase in production with less human input. So then the next changeover was probably electricity. Is think of all the things that all of a sudden electricity was there. You don't need lamp lighters. Street lights used to be lit by hand by somebody. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of time every day for people to go out and light lamps. Those people don't exist. So, the job switchover is so massive when you look at the history. One of the videos I watched recently, a TED Talk, the speaker spoke about if you were in the year 1900, you could read a headline that would be factually true that would say 94% of jobs right now won't exist in 2020. Could you imagine the panic of people? Like, there will be no jobs. What's anybody going to do? But we're almost there, and most people are employed just like in the year 1900. It's just we're doing different jobs. Well, and then we've had the whole internet revolution, computing power, all that too. That would kind of be like a third switch over. But then you had app designers. You had to have hardware engineers to design computers. Think of with Tesla, you have all these engineers designing autopilot, AI, machine learning, because the cars all send back their data as Tesla requests from the car, and then that builds on their AI computer, and they send out updates, and then my car gets smarter because it now has all this gained knowledge. The car is actually autonomous. It's not driving by GPS. It's not being told what to do by California. It's literally looking at the road and driving. So this is just another thing in the job switchover that what will be our next thing. And we really don't have a good answer, just like we didn't back then either, because we didn't know what the world was really going to look like yet.
Do you have any idea of predictions? Or?
I really don't. I'm not good at predictions, and I don't really have anything for that one. And the same TED Talk talked about you want to be replaced by a machine because that opens up your ability to do something more towards what you were meant to do, your passions, your skills. The basic jobs that a computer can do well, humans are suited to do more technical, creative things that a computer can't do. So that was his take on it, and I completely agree. How many people do we not know are geniuses or could have invented or could be artists, but they're in a job to just get by. They can't pursue their passion. Where if this opens that up, we could more likely find these people. So that's one thing that I'm not predicting that. That was Sean Riley, his TED Talk on you want to be replaced by a machine.
But then if they're not working, how are they even making money to pursue their passion?
Yep, and that's the discussion part. We don't know what jobs will there
Right.
be, will there not. Well, that's one of the discussions with a universal basic income.
So we see this already happening in Walmart. We have self-checkout. Amazon, you can go to the grocery store. You don't even need to. I think all you have to do is scan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you bring up this point of universal basic income. Tell us more about that.
Having the government essentially write every citizen a check every month that covers some level of basic expenses.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really personally have any opinion on it at this point because I don't know if we're really going there or if it's really great. It's one of those ideas for what could happen in your, if it's more of a dystopian future where, well, what do you do when 50% of people aren't employed? Like, that could be a part of the solution because the companies that are making so much have to pay more in a tax that keeps society functional because, well, that's kind of government's job is keeping society functional. People can complain it's about control and I shouldn't pay this tax or whatever. We can debate that all day and that's fine. Everybody's got a different opinion. But then all of a sudden, if a bunch of people aren't working, like you said, I don't know if we get there, that's one thing that could be a consideration, that universal basic income.
It's just so mind-blowing because what a change, and how do we, and will that work?
That's the question. Will it work?
Yeah.
Does it ever need to? Are we going to get there?
And then how do we figure that out?
Mm-hmm. Well, just like we've done with every government, we try it and see how it goes, and if it doesn't work, we go back to something else. I mean, that's just kind of how it works. That's why we have the legislature and everything else to keep everything running and decide what's going to work.
Man. I think I need to go, replan my life out.
And that was another topic in that Sean Riley talk. Mm-hmm. Was, you have to think about what are the jobs of the future. Mm-hmm. And in the other talks, and it was, I believe, in the PBS special Frontline recently, that they had where, well, what are we going to do, or how's this going to look on a career scale is what's going to be out there. People who adapt, people who have social skills are the jobs that will exist. You still need caregivers. You still need people who help other people directly where a machine won't work for that function. At least in the foreseeable future, just like any technology. Mm-hmm. So that's some of the work it takes, and you see people complain, well, I don't lose my job. To progress, though. They look at it as losing a job, where everyone who doesn't have that job looks at it as progress because something they buy will become cheaper. So, if all of a sudden putting solar panels on my house and a battery in the basement, and now I don't need the utility company and I save money, well, that might reduce their function and their jobs, but it made my life more cost effective. And really, business is making money, and how can we sell something that someone else wants because it's worth the value, it's worth the cost. So, it's always the discussion on what is progress, and is that progress to a majority of the people? And if it's enough people for a business to make money, then we will have that product.
Mm-hmm. But how are we going to get enough electricity?
Well, that's easy. Solar with batteries can take care of the whole works by itself if need be.
But solar panels, are you talking solar panels? Mm-hmm. Solar panels take up a lot of space. Mm-hmm. And do they generate enough electricity? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
To run things like that?
Yeah, you can Google it, what the space it actually takes up. Mm-hmm. And on the U.S. map, it's this red dot in Arizona. Could power the whole United States.
Really?
So that's not good because that's in one spot. Mm-hmm. And that's the best location is in Arizona for how much energy you get out of it. However, there's a perk of being farther north, is they're cooler. Solar panels run more efficiently if they're cool, actually. Mm-hmm. So even though we may not get as much direct sunlight, they're running more efficiently. So we do have a little bit of a perk there. And actually, southwest North Dakota is not bad. Northern edge of North Dakota is 2 tiers lower on this scale for how much solar energy per year you get. So in Dickinson, I actually know of people who are purchasing solar panels right now to put on houses because they've reached the point where the investment they feel is worth it for the long-term on their energy bill, the resale of the house. They really feel it's a future thing. And you have businesses who are putting batteries in their basement in areas that have blackouts or brownouts. Just think of a major business being down for a whole day because of power. That could be millions of dollars lost, that company.
Yeah.
So if you can put a $1 million battery system in the basement that trickle charges every night and make sure it's ready and can power your business for a day, and it does it once to pay for itself, all of a sudden that's a business investment. So that's another place where batteries come in. And Tesla does that as well. They do home energy storage for this exact reason.
Why aren't we all why aren't we transitioning to solar panels?
Part of it, we don't pay for those pollution costs. Remember, we pay for it in our healthcare. So it's actually healthcare costs are a subsidy for pollution right now with whatever industry you want to talk about. It doesn't matter if you're talking about fossil fuels or a factory making something. If over time what comes out of their stacks injures anyone, they don't pay for it. Society does. So if we started like a carbon tax or an emissions tax, you would see the switch very quickly. Again, the same story with those Nordic countries. They aren't paying for it, so their transition is sooner. California, just because of the cost of their electricity, they're moving towards it, and actually they're requiring that every new house built be set up for having solar. Like, it's a requirement in the building code now. So they're getting there. We're close. We can see it.
Are there just some things you see completely being eliminated within the next 10 to 20 years? I know you're not like a psychic or whatever, but
I would just go with what I see on a lot of these shows. These definitely aren't original thoughts from me. Your clerical work, look at voice chat, look at transcription. You can now feed a sheet of paper through a scanner in 1 second, and it transcribes that sheet instantly. You don't have someone listening to medical transcription like you used to in some cases. It's putting it together. Now that one's tough because there's a lot of terms in medical, there's names. So that one's not by any means perfect, but we used to not have any machine recognize any voice, and now how many texts are sent that are just voice to text all the time? I use it very regularly, and it's very accurate. So a lot of the paper positions, look at like what you call with Walmart, there's going to be more self-service on things, because if it's quicker, my point of view, I'm looking at it as, do I want to stand in line for a half hour? Or do I want to check myself out, which will take me longer than the cashier, but I don't have to wait. It'll take me 7 minutes to get through instead of waiting in line for 20 and then having a 4-minute cashier experience. To me, it's worth it because I have work to do. I'm going to go to a friend's house. My time is of value. And that's actually the thing I think some people don't really think about is how important time is. In my opinion, time is the most important commodity by far.
Why do you say that? I agree with you, but I'm curious to hear what you...
Because I always have something else I want to be doing. Like, not that what I'm doing at any given moment isn't what I want to do, but there's always more. Like, if somebody said, okay, all of next week, you can't run your business. Like, you have to take a week off. We're doing this massive audit and you can't touch your books. Okay, I would have no problem filling up that week immediately. I have so many other things, hobbies, friends to go see, all these things I would go do that just aren't in the priority list today. I mean, I'm going to do them probably over the next 6 months or a year. I tell myself that. But, you know, there's always things to do. So when people ask if I've ever been bored, I can't remember.
Yeah. Agreed.
I mean, just something like all of a sudden on a show like this. You know, out of nowhere, never expected this. So that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, if I'm being completely honest, I've been on the brink of a heart attack this whole time, just enveloped with this information and my mind being blown. Thank you so much, Brian, for being on Tea Talks today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I can't wait to hear your response on this episode. We'll see you soon.
Okay, just the ending wasn't.
I know, I'm sorry. I really
everything
suck
was
at
great.
I really suck at that. I just don't know what to say. Like it 1,000 times because he's amazing.
I'm just gonna put this part in, and that's gonna solve it. Yeah, so I'm just gonna put the whole thing in. Bye, everybody.
So one question, do I get to see it before it goes online?
Nope.
Yes.